Hello, sports fans. It's that time of year. It's playoff time, and we're excited. You're excited. Coaches are excited. The players are excited. It's a new thing in Delaware. 17 more teams making the playoffs this year than in past years with the three classes. Class one is not starting for 2 more weeks, so we're not even going to talk about them tonight. But next week, we'll do another thing like we're doing tonight, where on Thursday night, we'll drop a podcast that gives you our thoughts on all the upcoming games. So we're going to focus on class two and class three tonight. This isn't going to take the place of Sunday's podcast. We'll still drop a podcast on Sunday, which will talk about all the games that go on that we're going to talk about tonight. We'll tell you which ones we had right, which ones we had wrong, and our thoughts on how it all went down. So we're going to start in class two. And class two is the class where probably no argument. There's maybe the most teams that have a chance to win a state championship.
Agreed.
And there's some, how they did it is they took the three districts in class two and the top four teams in each district made it. And there is some controversy that, team 5 and 6 and district 3 might be better than team whatever in district 1 and 2. And that's something that the committee is going to be looking at after this 2-year process of what they think they might need to tweak. And I would think that is probably something that they are going to end up tweaking and not just taking automatically the top 4 teams in each district. I can see them rewarding the top 2 teams in each district and giving them the automatic bids. But I think after that, you have to go to some sort of what the index system is and take the next best 6 teams. So it'd be 2 from each district and the next 6 best teams, no matter what district they come to. But that's down the road. Let's not talk about that. Let's get right into the games. The number 12 team, Concord, coming in with a 4-6 record. They're going to travel to DMA at 9-1, and number 5 in Marty. We talked about, DMA hasn't won a playoff game, but I'm not sure if this is the first playoff game they're hosting at their new stadium. Because remember, they played up at the old Baynard for a couple of years. And I think they've been using the DMA stadium for 2 straight years. Not sure if they hosted a playoff game last year. We'll have to look that up. But anyway, in week 9, DMA won 43-0 over Concord. So that's the first thing we're going to look at. These 2 teams have already played, and DMA blew them out 43-0. DMA averages 39.2 points per game. Concord averages 17.5. And you might say, well, who cares? That they play a bunch of different teams. Well, actually, that's not the case. They played 6 common opponents. And so that plays into this here. And the other thing I looked at when I was doing the research for all these games is the number of wins against playoff teams. DMA had 4 wins against playoff teams. The only loss they had against a playoff team was that loss to Archmere in week 10. Concord only 1 playoff win. So Marty, we decided we're going to do the games that we thought were the easy ones to predict and work toward the tougher ones. The stats alone I just gave you make this one a pretty guarantee that DMA is going to come away with a win. Now, you play the game. You play the game on the field. These are kids. You never know what's going to happen. Somebody may not show up that night. Somebody might get hurt in practice this week. You never know. So they're going to play it on the field. But when you look at those stats, the most glaring one that DMA has already beaten the Concord Raiders 43-0 in week 9. I think that's a little different if it's week 1 or 2. A lot can change to these teams. But when you beat somebody in week 9, 43-0, you're going to play them 2 weeks later. There's a lot of things that are going to have to go the wrong way for DMA for Concord to come away with a win here.
I agree. And I really think DMA is probably going to come out like a wounded animal backed into the corner. I mean, they were going to be the number 1 or 2 seed if they beat Archmere on Friday night, and then they get thumped. And all of a sudden their first round bye goes out the window. So I think they're going to come into this game fired up as heck, which probably Concord would not probably been happier if DMA was coming off a win if they were playing this game, to be honest, because you have a DMA team that's going to be so hungry right now. Greg Mitchell's he's a good coach, and they're going to do everything they can to battle plan for DMA, but there's just not enough there. For Concord, their top players, they do have some good talent on this team. Jarrah Wright, running back, who was the second team all-district running back, 751 yards, 5 touchdowns. They don't throw the ball a lot, and they don't throw it very effectively. Colin Pye's the quarterback, 33 of 77, 411 yards, 3 TDs, and 4 interceptions. So if they get forced to go to the air, it's going to make things even more tricky. And we know the DMA defensive line and linebackers are outstanding. So that's going to be a challenge. They did have one first team member on the all district team, and that was Jeff McNulty as a linebacker / offensive guard. He leads team with 32 tackles and 3 forced fumbles, and that's in limited time. So I'm guessing there may have been an injury involved in there somewhere. For DMA, of course, you got Aline and Devin Green. DMA, I did put out a call to the 14 coaches playing this weekend for statistics, and appreciative that 10 of them did send me statistics. DMA was not among them, so I don't have their numbers. I did know the first thing that popped out when I looked at the this issue of War and Peace, otherwise known as the all district team list. Good grief, this thing is humongous, by the way. There's thousands of names in this thing. It was that
did I make it, Marty? Did I make the
my gosh,
team?
I know. I'm looking to see if my 89 stats are on here for yeah, I think they that Brad Myers does that thing every week where he lists the top players that had performances. Basically it looks like they combined every one of those into one list and slapped it on there and threw it out to us. But in all seriousness, congratulations to anyone who made these teams. It's always accomplishment to make an all whatever team. So, but the shock for me was BJ Aline was not the first team quarterback in 2A District 1. It is Marvin Atkins of Del Castle. So I looked up, I tried to get Marvin's stats. I could not get them. I'm very curious to see, because BJ Aline has had a phenomenal season, both on the ground and in the air. But regardless, you put BJ Aline and Devin Green back there. Devin Green was the district player of the year. There's just way too much offense, too much defense. This is going to be, I foresee a very close score as to what happened the first time, but good experience for the Concord kids in the playoffs, and hopefully they'll take something positive from it. But for DMA, boy, not like it gets easier. They go right back on the road this time to Archmere after they win this one, which I'm pretty sure they will.
Yeah. And, I think two big advantages that DMA has is they've got the home field advantage, and they're motivated to win their first playoff game, Marty. We've seen a lot of these DMA teams go 8-2. I think they went 9-1 one year, 7-3 a couple years. They get into the playoffs and they get beat. And so that's their motivation. I'm going to correct you. The winner is going to play Caravel, not Archmere.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
They're heading to Caravel right around the street from me. But it's going to be a great home field. Jeremy John's going to have that team fired up. And Jeremy John's the athletic director. He's going to have the kids fired up there. They've got a great home field advantage. Marty, you're going to have to open that back door. It's going to be loud in your neighborhood till late at night that night. So Concord heading to DMA, and I think we both think that DMA is going to take that. All right, next you got number 11, Newark. Haven't said that name and the word playoffs in a while. No. At number 6, Delmar. Newark comes in with a 5-5 record. Delmar at 6-3. These two teams did not play during the regular season. They had one common opponent. It was Lake Forest. Delmar won against Lake Forest 36-12. Newark lost to Lake Forest 52-14. Let me repeat those scores. Delmar beat the one common opponent 36-12. Newark lost to the one common opponent 52-14. The wins versus playoff teams in their class. And that's all I looked at. I don't care if you beat a team in a class below you. Who cares? Playoff teams in your class. Delmar has one win. That was against Sussex Tech. Newark did not beat a playoff team in their class. So that gives you a little bit of history about these two teams and what is going to happen. Again, you got a number 11 Newark versus number 6 Delmar. It's a big uphill climb for the Yellow Jackets, and it starts with a long bus ride downstate.
It does. That's the biggest thing too. When that whole thing shuffled, when they lost, it affected all these other teams and where they'd have to go. So yeah, you're right. Newark with that long bus ride down. They've got some good weapons. Quarterback Damian Wright completed about 50% of his passes for 947 yards. Again, 6 TDs, 7 interceptions. So not real proficient in the passing game. Did rush for another 250 yards. They've got a two-headed monster at running back, Marty Ellerby and Jair Townsend. They've combined for about 800 yards and 14 touchdowns between them. The wide receivers, Jaden Smith, who's had a really good season, 38 catches, 428 yards, 5 touchdowns. They get some really good contributions on defense from Jaden Smith, DeJour White, Marty Ellerby again, who has 9 tackles for loss on the season. So, but they're going to need every bit of that and then some. And then they're going to need a letdown performance from Delmar. That place is going to be rocking, as we know. For Delmar, it's kind of funny not having a Friday night game.
Right.
I believe this is a day game. Is it correct?
No,
it's a Saturday. This is a Saturday night game. I'm sorry. Okay. Yep. So yeah, they still are going to be
Friday. It's actually Friday night. It is Friday, unless it's changed. Now we got to say that these games and times can change And the DIAA made that clear, whether it's this late and they'll change or not. So don't take our word, what we're giving you. Make sure you look at the schedule, because everything was up for the opportunity to change for whatever reason. But it is listed in the bracket that came out that this game would be played Friday night down at Del Mar.
And I take that back, because then this place will be rocking on Friday night in Del Mar. I memean, that's their niche right there. That's their area. They're going to get major contributions as they have all season. J.W. Warner, 840 yards carrying for them. Also caught 5 passes, 7 touchdowns total. Trent Kemp, a fullback, which aside from Del Mar, you don't see very many fullbacks still in Delaware. Although I did see one of the all-district teams listed 4 fullbacks, I believe, is on the first and second team. At 564 yards for Kemp, 10 receptions, 8 touchdowns in total. Josh Oakley, the quarterback, they only listed 3 games for him, but they listed him among their stat leaders. So I'm guessing, again, there may be an injury there, something that he's coming back from, or he took over as the starter. But Josh Oakley completing 50% of his passes, just over 100 yards. He can also run the ball, averaging about 5 yards a carry. Defensively, Trent is the guy. Trent Kemp, the fullback, linebacker, leading tackler on the team with 44, 5 tackles for loss. This is going to be one of those games for, we'd have a tough time ranking which game was going to be an uphill climb more for Newark or in the first game that we talked about, Concord. So I think Newark, again, the experience is going to be phenomenal. Jody Russell has done a nice job down there, and this is really a nice reward for these kids who you and I know they've busted their butts over the years, and they just haven't seen much reward for it. This is a great trip down to Del Mar, where they're going to be in an atmosphere that, frankly, they probably haven't seen in Newark in years.
No.
That they've played in front of this kind of an atmosphere. So for the fans, the players, cheerleaders, everybody, this is going to be fun. It's going to end up being a long bus ride home, because Del Mar is just way, way too much. Newark's still pretty young at some of the major positions, and just not enough firepower to compete with this team. And they also have a number of two-way players. Del Mar wears you down on the ground throughout the game. So again, this will be much in the same vein as DMA and Concord, but Del Mar will win this one going away.
Yeah, this hometown lives for games like this. The whole town will be out. They'll be surrounding that field. They'll be in the field. They'll be around the fence. Just it's supposed to be a phenomenal place to watch a football game. Never done that. It's on my bucket list, actually. Winner's going to have to drive up and play Wilmington Friends, either a shorter drive for Newark or a very long bus ride for Del Mar the following Saturday. So we both think Newark's going to take it. Del Mar is going to take it over Newark. All right, that takes us to number 10, Sussex Tech, coming in at 6-4, traveling to Tower Hill, number 7 at 7-2. They did not play during the regular season. Tower Hill comes in on a 4-game winning streak. Sussex Tech comes in on a 3-game winning streak. Tower Hill averaging 39 points a game. Sussex Tech 33 points a game. And so there you got, a little bit of something to look at. Even so far, it looks like the Brandywine is the one common opponent. Tower Hill beat Brandywine 42-14 at their own homecoming. Sussex Tech beat Tower Hill 41-0 at their own homecoming. So again, another close statistic there. Playoff team wins. Tower Hill has 1. They beat Howard, a surprise to a lot of us. Sussex Tech has 0 playoff winnings in their class. So as we get closer to the numbers, this is a number 10 and a number 7. You can see the matchups get a little bit closer. Marty, I'm not sure where to go here. Sussex Tech was the Division I team a couple years ago, and Tower Hill has never been a Division I team. So, back in the day, a couple years ago, you would have taken Sussex Tech in a heartbeat. Not so sure anymore. Sussex Tech did get better as the season went on. They started out, we were all shocked, because some of us questioned why Sussex Tech was in Class 2 to begin with.
Yes.
But then they started out poorly, but they've had a very good, solid second half of the season. They've gotten better as the season goes on. So I'm not going to say this is a toss-up. I think I'd still go with Tower Hill coming in at 7-2, but I'm just not sure. They are getting tougher to pick at this point.
They really are. And you're right. Sussex Tech got off to a 1-3 start. By the way, these are 2 teams, unfortunately, that we didn't get any statistics for. But and looking at the 2 teams, what really stands out to me when I'm looking at Tower Hill's schedule is the huge win over St. Andrews, which is put up some really good offensive numbers. They shut them out 44-0. Tatnall, they beat them 49-0 when Tatnall was on a 6-game winning streak and putting up some crazy numbers. Of course, they doubled up Howard 32-16. It just seems like that this group from Tower Hill at this point is on such a roll. They haven't lost since going back to September 25th. They lost to Friends 28-7. But excuse me, they did lose to Archmere on October 16th. So they're on a 4-game winning streak during which they've scored no less than 32 points in each game and scored nearly 50 in 2 of them. So yeah, I again, this is so weird because a couple of years ago we were seeing Sussex Tech compete with Slasianum, compete with Middletown. They even beat Sally's a time or two, including a playoff game a number of years back. But they're both in the same category now. Tower Hill has just had a far better season, more consistent. And I just think that Tower Hill offense, they're varied. They can throw the ball at any time. They can run the ball at any time. And I just think it's going to be too much. Again, a nice bus ride for Sussex Tech up here. And Tower Hill, it's always weird for these teams to come up and take that bus ride and come up here and play. So, and I believe this is a Saturday at 7 p.m. game.
That is correct.
And that's a fairly new phenomenon at Tower Hill, I believe. I don't believe they always had night games.
I was questioning whether it was going to be at Abyssinia, but it's not. It's at Tower Hill.
Yeah, that's right. And I looked at their games, and they've had a couple 7:00 starts at Tower Hill this year. So they either some of those big Tower Hill donors came through, or they brought in some
the price of admissions just went up.
That's right. That's right. So I really think it is a toss-up game, I do think, to some degree, but I also agree that Tower Hill is the stronger team throughout. Sussex Tech could put together a great game, give them they could pull off the win. I just don't think it's going to happen. Tower Hill at home going to be a great playoff atmosphere up there, and they're going to send Sussex Tech home unhappy.
Yeah, the 3 games we talked about, if you had to ask me that I had to pick one upset out of the 3 we've talked about so far, this would be the one that I would take the upset. The winner's going to play up at or down at Woodbridge, across the state from Woodbridge if you're Sussex Tech, if they end up winning. So that's what they've got waiting coming for them. All right, next we have number 8 St. Mark's and number 9 Howard. The game I think that is the toughest to pick. St. Mark's comes in with a 7-3 record. Howard, a surprising 5-5. Remember, this is a Howard team at the beginning of the season. Everybody was squawking about why they weren't up in Class 3 as the 2-time defending state champions in Division 2. They basically proved they belong exactly where they are. They did not play in the regular season, but they did have 4 common opponents.
Yep.
Both of them lost to Woodbridge. Both of them lost to Archmere. Both of them lost to DMA. And both of them beat Concord. And both of them beat Concord rather handily, 35-7 for St. Mark's, 58-7 for Howard. So doesn't tell you a whole lot there other than they are probably evenly matched. It's definitely the toughest Class 2 or 3 first-round game, I think, to pick these 2 teams. And so, Marty, what are you thinking?
I agree. And the one game I zeroed in on was both of their games against DMA. St. Mark's was blown out 35-7. Howard scored a late touchdown to make it closer, but Howard really played tremendously well. If I recall, they led, I believe, either 8-7 or 7-6 at halftime of that game. So they really gave that running game of DMA a difficult time. I agree. This is a toss-up because with Howard, you just never know what you're going to get. I'm looking at the Howard stats, and one thing that really stood out to me was they don't have 1,000 yards rushing on the season. Not only do they not have anyone close to 1,000 yards, the entire team has only rushed for 744 yards. That's not like we've seen Howard in the past. Their leading rushers, Keyshawn Watson, 356 yards and 6 touchdowns. They do a lot of damage through the air, and it's Rashawn Matthews. He's completed 91 of 197 passes, 1,350 yards. He's got 9 interceptions, which is a little concerning, but 15 touchdowns. So he's still on the positive side there. For St. Mark's, this has been a great job by Joey Wright. I mean, remember, they missed the playoffs by 1 game during the COVID shortened season last year. But they've gotten some really good contributions from guys. Chase Padalano is, I believe, their quarterback. He made the 3rd team all district. They have 2 quarterbacks listed on their stat sheets, and believe it or not, their stats are almost identical. One's played 10 games, one's played 6. They've both thrown for about 400 yards. They've combined for 8 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. But the guy who's going to do the damage for them is on the ground, and that's Donovan Artis. 121 carries, 823 yards, averaging 82 yards a game. He's got 14 touchdowns.
Oh,
They also have Matthew Hanich in the backfield. He's rushed for 350 yards and 6 touchdowns. So St. Mark's is one of those teams that's going to try to wear you down. They're not going to kill you through the air. They will take some nice opportune shots. I watched one of their games on YouTube, and they will run some pro set offenses at times that look to confuse the defenses. But for the most part, this is artists just blasting through the holes in the middle or going around the ends. And to me, I just think the home field advantage here of being at the graveyard. I think the atmosphere, St. Mark's has been hyping this on their social media accounts all week. I think it's going to be enough for this team to get past a Howard team that is either, and we don't really know the answer to this, but they're either really young and banged up or just really young. I'm guessing it's both at the end of a long season where they've gone 5-5 because
and it started with a small roster.
That's right. They started with a small roster to begin with. So, and they lost so much to graduation last year, which Dan Ritter hollered to everybody who would listen early in the season when they were putting realignment together. And of course they end up going 5-5. So I think this is a great experience for the young kids on Howard who are just getting into that tradition of seeing all these state championships, but this is not going to be that year. I think Joey Wright and St. Mark's come through this one.
I'm going to stick with Howard only because I picked them as my Cinderella pick. Those of you who listened to the podcast last week. So I'm not going to go against that. Nothing has come up that has made me think that they won't have a chance to upset St. Mark's. Sometimes you're best going into a playoff game with nothing to lose. And that's basically where Howard's at right now. St. Mark's has beaten 2 playoff teams in their district, Newark and Concord. Howard just won, and that was Concord. Also, the winner is going to get to play Archmere the following week, a team that many think is the team to beat in District 2. All right, let's move over to Class 3A. These are the big dogs, the former Division One. Smyrna, the number 1 seed, has a bye. Middletown, the 2 seed. Sally's the 3 seed. St. George's 4, and Dover 5. And those are the teams that are awaiting the first round games. The St. George's and Dover are already going to play each other, but they're not going to play each other until the second round. So they've both got the week off. So we are going to start as we did with the teams that we think are the easier to pick because of the separation of the seedings, and that is number 6 Sussex Central hosting number 11 Caesar Rodney High School on Friday night. Sussex Central has a 5-5 record. Caesar Rodney, the first team in the history of Delaware to go into the playoffs with 0 wins, and that's not a bash against them. That's just a fact that it is. Both of these teams played in week 10. Your winner, Sussex Central, 42-6. That's the first glaring stat that tells you this is an easy game to fix. Caesar Rodney has only scored more than a touchdown in 1 game, albeit against St. George's, one of the better teams in Class 3, but they've only scored more than 1 touchdown in 1 of their 10 games. I think it's the easiest to predict, if for no other reason than these 2 teams just played each other, and Sussex Central won 42-6.
That's right. And I actually, the committee had to hear from each of the teams in this year's playoffs if they wanted to participate. And I got to be honest, the only question I had the entire time was if Caesar Rodney was going to be able to or even want to put a team out there in the first round of the playoffs. This is a tough season for Coach Candeloro down there. I believe they're averaging about 5 points a game. They're giving up about 30 points a game. So they've just not been able to generate any offense. Unfortunately, I didn't get any statistics from Caesar Rodney. Sussex Central is just going to kill you on the ground. They're led by Chris Shields, 600 yards, Andrew Long, 650 yards. They have a receiver, Gunnar Abbott, 12, which I love that name, by the way, 12 catches for 180 yards. Shields is also the big man with 55 tackles on defense. Sussex Central, not a great season by their standard by any means. I mean, they're the defending state champions. I don't think they'll pull that off again this year. I'm sure a lot of people are in agreement with that, at least at the beginning of the playoffs till we see what happens. But yeah, this is one of those games, just way too much Sussex Central. The Golden Knights they're gonna roll through this. And again, I keep pointing this out, but great experience for Coach Candeloro and his kids to get back into the playoffs, even though it's in one of the more bizarre situations we've come across. We haven't even gotten to the game that's the most bizarre to me, but a little too much Sussex Central here. They're going to roll through this one. You know,
and hats off to Caesar Rodney for showing up for this game, because the easy thing to do is to not show up for the game. You know, these are kids that are still practicing. every night. So they're still going to bed early. They're still balancing schoolwork with practice, which they wouldn't have to do if they just threw the towel in. But that's not the case. Their weekend is going to be taken up by this game. Yep. And so, their game is on Friday night. So their Friday night is booked, and that wouldn't have had to be the case. So hats off, and that tells you something about Dan Candeloro, and it tells you about something about the coaching staff, and it tells you something about the kids, that they're willing to accept the invitation at 0-10, having only scored one touchdown per game in all but one game, and come and play a team that just beat you 42-6, what's going to be exactly a week before that. So our hats off to Caesar Rodney. We can't pick you that you're going to win the game, but we still think it's great that you're showing up for the game.
Absolutely.
All right. Next, we have number 7 Appoquinimink hosting number 10 Cape on a Saturday night game, a rarity. Marty, I've been at all the Appo home games on Friday night, typically good crowds. I think it'll be a good crowd even on Saturday night. Appo comes in at 5-5. Cape is the team that has one win. They're the ones that beat Caesar Rodney. So they're going to come in 1-9. These teams played each other in week 8. It was 55-27. But Marty, I remember talking about that game on the podcast. I never felt like it was a blowout, even though when you look at that score, okay, well, they doubled the number of points, but it was late action that got to that point. We never felt that I could leave at halftime. I forget what the score was, but I never felt that Appo had put the game away. They had a blocked field goal for a touchdown. They had 6 rushing touchdowns. Evan Bolden, the kicker, also the soccer player, 6 for 6 on extra points. And so, when you score like that, but they never seemed to just shut down. Like whenever there was a time where I thought, if we score here, that's it. Yep. They didn't score. Or if we got to stop Cape, if we stop Cape, that's probably it. And then Cape came down and scored. And that's how they got their 27 points. So that's just the reality of it. Looking at what they did in week 9, Appo lost to Smyrna 48-7, lost to Sally's 21-15. So week 10, so Appo's coming in on a 2-game losing streak. So that could be sort of a negative. I know they're practicing like everybody. And so we'll see what happens there. Cape is coming in with nothing to lose. I think Cape had a disappointing season. I know hearing a lot of the hype at the beginning of the season, you kind of thought Cape was going to be maybe 6-4, something like that. And they end up being 1-9. So not sure what happened there. But really, they have nothing to lose. And again, hats off to them for accepting the bid. The easy thing to do is say, you know what, we're not driving up to Appoquinimink on Friday night. We're going. It's time to go on Thanksgiving vacation. So good for them. They got nothing to lose. Appo, they easily beat Cape. If you look at the score, wasn't as easy as the score indicates, as I just explained. So they got to show up. They've got to be there. I think a lot is going to ride on the health of Ryan Von Brandt. Remember, he hurt his left arm in the game against Sally's and basically eliminated him from running the football, which greatly altered the Appoquinimink offense. And so that's going to be a key thing. I haven't gotten any reports about his arm. Hopefully he's 100%, because if he's not 100%, it's going to be a little bit tougher. I still think Appo could win if he's not 100%, but I'm hoping for their sake he's 100%, because they're going to need him when they win in the following week. They go to play Middletown. So
that's right. Go ahead.
No.
I actually thought the same thing with Ryan Von Brandt. And it's funny because of the game and because of who they're playing. You would think Appo would want to get off to a lead very quickly. Believe it or not, they actually led that game 34-7 in the third quarter before Cape came just flying back. And they ended up needing every one of those points. But yeah, it was probably one of the crazier games of the season. But excuse me, Ryan Von Brandt, had a phenomenal season. Threw for 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, rushed for over 600 yards, 7 touchdowns. But the guy that's going to be the big difference, especially if Von Brandt is not 100% healthy, is Daniel McConomy, sophomore, 637 yards on 98 carries. And I didn't know this till I got Coach Timpson's stats today, but he missed the first 4 games of the season.
Yeah, he was hurt.
So yeah, this was a lot of work done in a short period of time, and he's quietly become one of the best running backs in the state. The senior wide receiver Jaden Weatherspoon, 41 catches, 703 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So he's clearly Von Brandt's top target. I just think I'm with you wholeheartedly that this game is much. I hate to use the word easier, but I don't know what to say. With Von Brandt in the offense, there's just too much for Cape to account for. if he's not 100% and he's kind of limited and he can only throw the ball, it's going to be incumbent on that offensive line and economy to get things done. I still think, based on watching some Cape games, there's just too much Appaquiddick there. Coach Timpson, again, 2-game losing streak, but that Sally's game, until Von Brandt got hurt, they were early in control of that game. It was 9-0, I believe, Appaquiddick. So,
well, he got hurt early. He got hurt on the first play.
He did.
So,
you're right,
they still, like you said, they still went up 9-0, even without with the one thing of their quarterback.
And just couldn't get they really couldn't maintain a lot of offense after that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you said, he was limited. We didn't see him run much. So I still think just way too much Appaquiddick in this case. And, Coach Timpson's done a nice job down there. For all those years in Flight A, they kind of muddled around the middle. They would make the playoffs here and there. They're still doing that to some degree, but for the most part, they've become pretty well respected. They still can't compete with the top teams. They're still the little brother to Middletown, which I'm sure they probably hate to hear, but it's the way it is. It's one of those cases. I remember one of the quotes of the year for me, and I don't remember the young man's name, but it was a Middletown running back, and he was being asked a question after the game, and the question was, "What does this rivalry mean to you guys?" And he said, "Well, it's not a rivalry to us, but I guess it is to them. We're just happy to get out of here with a win." And I thought, ouch, boy, I'm sure he didn't even know what he was doing, but sticking the knife in real quick and twisting it. It's a big rivalry to them. But I think Coach Timpson's done a nice job, and I think they come away with a big win here.
Well, and I think also what's happening, Marty, and I have a friend, excuse me, whose son is a freshman in the Middletown football program, or I'm sorry, in the Appaquiddick football program. And he actually could have gone to Middletown. That's his, I think that's his natural school to go to. But she asked me, she said, "What do you think about the two football programs?" And I said, "Well, I can tell you this." I said, "If your kid's a superstar, he might get in when he's a sophomore, probably not till he's a junior, and then we'll play as a senior. At Appaquiddick, if your kid's an above average player, which his kid is, he'll probably play as a sophomore, probably start as a junior, and then be a star in the as a senior." And so what I think is happening slowly is people, if they're football players, 7-8 years ago when Appo first opened up, if you were a serious football player, you were trying to figure out how you could choice into Middletown High School. There wasn't any question about that. We heard funny story. I heard one story of a family bought an apartment inside the Middletown district so that they could send their kid to high school there to play football, which is insane, but that's the reality of it. But I don't think that's happening anymore. I'm not saying people who live in Middletown and play football are choosing into Appo, but I think Appo is hanging on to the football players who live in the Appo school district. And I think that's starting to show in the record and the talent. And, it takes time to build a program. That Middletown program was not built in 10 years, which is how long Appaquiddick High School has been up there. So anyway, it's going to be a tough game for Cape to win. But again, they come in it with nothing to lose, and hats off to Coach Mall and to the players and stuff for coming up here to play this game. And there's not that much of a big difference, as you just pointed out. Yappo had that 34-7 lead and almost blew. They never really blew the lead, but they couldn't put them away. That 34-7 point you're talking about is when I was probably starting to think, okay, if I leave now, I get out of the parking lot and get home earlier. And then all of a sudden, Cape scored twice in a row or whatever it was. And so Appo's going to have to show up. There's no doubt about it. But I do think they will take it. The winner goes to play Middletown. So not a fun. The celebration is going to last about an hour after that game, and then you're going to realize you got to start watching film about Middletown. So
that's right.
All right, the toughest game probably to pick. Number 8 William Penn is going to host number 9 Hodson. That's Saturday at noon. Both these teams are used to playing on Saturday, so that's not going to be a big deal. They beat William Penn beat Hodson. If I said Howard, I meant Hodson. 41-6 back on September 25th, homecoming. Again, a lot happens a month, 6 weeks later. They had 2 pick sixes in that game and 3 touchdown runs of 30+ yards. So it was big plays that led them to that 41-6 win. And again, these teams are different teams in a lot of ways. The big thing for Hodson is that they were young and inexperienced at the beginning of the season. They're getting older and more experienced as the season goes on. They did have a good loss, William Penn, that is, and that was 21-19 to St. George's in week 10. So they actually finished the season with a strong loss, if there is such a thing, barely losing to St. George's, a team that has a bye. And so again, Hodson is young. They had a nice win over Newark, which boosted their confidence. Again, they should beat Newark. William Penn, as I mentioned, ended their season with a good loss. So this could be the toughest of the Class 3 games, I think. I think the other 2 games are going to be blowouts, no matter how you look at it. And that's just the reality of it. I think this game is going to be close. You look at Hodson, and I've been to a couple of their games, Marty. They look big, they look athletic, and they look quick like they always do. And it doesn't matter how old you are if you're big and you're athletic and you're quick, if you play smart. And you would hope and you would assume, and they're well coached. Frank Moffitt does a great job. Dave Collins, the offensive coordinator, that these kids are smarter football players than they were at the beginning of the season. So I would expect this game to be competitive from start to finish. The question will be which one of these teams, I think, is going to be the team that plays smarter, doesn't have foolish penalties, doesn't get caught off sides on 3rd and 3, 4th and 2, those types of things, and doesn't make the foolish mistakes on defense and the coverage and that type of thing. As I said, it was big plays that led William Penn to the win over Hodson during the regular season, the 2 pick sixes, and then 3 touchdown runs of 30-plus yards of 33, 42, and 80 yards. So big-time runs. If William Penn can't do that, if Hodson keeps them from doing that, this game could be close.
I agree. And one more descriptor I would add for Hodson is raw. Because those kids, there's so many unforced errors we've seen in the games, just fumbles out of nowhere, fumbled exchanges on the snap. And that goes along with the youngness of the team. It's funny, you said that win over Newark gave them a lot of confidence. That kind of tells the story of the Hodgson season, because over the last 5 seasons, a win over Newark would have been just a bump in the road for them.
Right.
But yeah, I agree that was a big one for them. And I looked at Frank Moffitt sent the stats last night for his Hodgson squad, and of the 7 players he sent stats for, 3 of them are freshmen and 2 of them are sophomores. So there's a lot of youth on this team. They do have a senior running back who leads the way for them, Jared Bryant, 390 yards, 3 touchdowns. But then they have their top receivers, Bryce Sheem Davis, 23 catches, 242 yards. They do struggle on defense. So I do think it's going to be interesting to see if William Penn, there again, hopefully you get a good turnout at William Penn. It's an afternoon game. They usually put on a really good show there. It's we've talked about, it's one of the most beautifully manicured fields in the state. This is a first for Delaware again, because this is the first ever Delaware playoff matchup of 2 teams with losing records. This was the crazy one I was referring to earlier. You have 4-6 William Penn hosting 2-8 Hodson on a Saturday afternoon in a playoff game. It's just welcome to the new world again.
Right.
But for William Penn, Markel Holman has just been their everything this season. 1,284 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns. Also has 200 yards receiving and a couple touchdowns. On defense, Jaden Bowers leads the way for them, 81 tackles, 17 tackles for loss. In fact, he and David Dunstan combined for 26 tackles for loss, which is just incredible. When William Penn wins, that defense is at the forefront of the effort. Now, against Cape, they had to put some points up, but for the most part, as the defense goes, this team goes. And I just think with the youth at all the key positions for Hodson, there's just too much there. I mean, Frank Moffitt and his staff have done a nice job, but I just don't think they're going to have enough on a Saturday afternoon when this William Penn team and the fan base is fired up. For William Penn, this is nice for them to have a home playoff game. We haven't seen that in a while for them. Yeah. So I just think William Penn comes away with this. I do think, as you said, I think Hodson is capable of giving them a good game. I just think after a long season, I think there's just going to be too much William Penn. I actually see them pulling away late for this one.
All right. And the winner, similar to the Appoquinimink Cape winner, it's going to be a celebration for about an hour. And then you got to start watching game film of the potent Smyrna offense. And so somebody's going to have to show up on defense for that. So that's what Class 3 is looking like. I think we both think William Penn is going to beat Hodson. Appoquinimink is going to take down Cape, and Sussex Central is going to beat Caesar Rodney. And then in Class 2, Marty went with St. Mark's over Howard. I'm going with Howard upsetting St. Mark's. They're my Cinderella team in Class 2. Both of us have DMA over Concord, Tower Hill over Sussex Tech, and Del Mar over Newark. So it's going to be interesting. As I said at the beginning, 17 more teams than otherwise in a normal year would have made it. When we say normal, this is the normal. This isn't COVID where we're going away from this. No. This is going to be the way it is. The question is going to be, is there going to be this many teams going forward? I can guarantee you this. There's not going to be more teams making the playoffs. They're not going to expand. I would expect that Class 3 is not going to have everybody in the playoffs once they fix. Well, this is a 2-year cycle. And so they're going to reevaluate it after 2 years. And so My guess would be that this is the last two. It'll be this year and next year probably where we see all 11 teams in Class 3, and then they're going to probably go back to just 8 teams. It'll be interesting to see what they do in Class 2 because that is the largest of the classes, so you can kind of justify having more playoff teams. I still think 12 is a little bit watered down, but we'll see what everybody thinks.
I agree.
And I think Class 1's always going to be 8 no matter what. So I think this year, and assuming they keep it the same, they can do whatever they want. They said this is a 2-year plan, but the committee can change that. They can decide at the end of this year that next year, hey, we're going to only take 18, or we're only going to take 6 teams, which is what it would have been like in Division 1 for Class 3. And we're going to take 8 teams for Class 2 and 8 teams for Class 3. They can do whatever they want. So one thing's for sure, there are never going to be more teams in the playoffs than there are this year. So basically enjoy it. Enjoy the fact that we have a whole bunch of games this week and we got a whole bunch of buys. Usually it's only 2 teams that have a bye, and they're the top 2 teams in Division 1 because everybody played in Division 2 because they only had 8 teams. And 4 of the 6 teams played in Division 1 that first round to get to the semi. So there's that. It's actually exciting. We're going to have football on Friday night. We're going to have football on Saturday afternoon. We're going to have football on Saturday night. So it's great. Marty, it doesn't get any better for you and me.
It doesn't really. I mean, this is awesome. I had said a few weeks ago, we're probably going to see some big blowouts in the first round, and I still believe we will.
Yeah.
If you're a Delaware football fan out there, don't be discouraged, because if you look ahead to some of the matchups next week, the potential matchups at 2 and 3, there are some really good games coming on the way. And who knows, again, you and I always say this is why you play the games. It seems like one year, some team, I remember DMA pulled off an upset of the number 1 seed as an 8 seed a few years back. So it's possible. It can happen. It's a little more difficult with how many teams they've allowed into the playoffs. And it's funny, I actually had a phone conversation with Jim Comegys today, and the one word he used to describe this weekend coming up was interesting.
Yeah.
It's the committee is kind of sitting here looking and saying, okay, what do we do? What do we got? I actually talked to him just real quickly. People had sent me, I got 4 questions this week about how Middletown ended up as the number 2 seed. And Jim explained it very easily. There was a phrase that has been in the manual for every year for the DIAA football committee. It was inadvertently omitted, and it made it appear that the Arundel team that Smyrna played gave them no bonus points, when in actuality they did, because one of their playoff games counted as their 10th game of the season. So it resulted in Middletown finishing with a 4.5 index, Smyrna with a 4.6. For anybody who was wondering, that is why Smyrna is your number 1 seed. I actually think it's pretty cool, because if you're Middletown, that gets you fired up. It's like if you take Alabama and put them as the 3 or 4 seed in the college football playoff, which they're going to be. I think that what we're going to see this weekend is a lot of energy, a lot of excitement from programs that haven't experienced it before. I mean, I was just thinking, your Newark program with Jody Russell. I mean, those kids are going to be so fired up to get out there and play in an actual playoff game.
I don't think they've been in the playoffs since Butch Simpson was there.
I don't think they have either. I was actually looking that up too.
I think they went 500 one year, and that's the closest they got. And that doesn't get you playoffs when you're in Division 1.
No. And some of these other teams in the Division 1 teams, our Class 1 teams, we'll see next week. I just feel like there's so much excitement at so many more schools. I've told people I'm still not sold on it, but I'm a heck of a lot more sold than I was before, because I've seen the excitement from the coaches and their stuff on social media, and the kids talking to each other, and the fans that come out to support these teams. I just think this is going to be a great weekend for Delaware High School football, regardless of how the results turn up. It's a new day, and let's celebrate it and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a new season, and even if they cut some of these teams out, Marty, it's still going to be competitive till the end. And so you get a Newark who in 2 years 5-5 might not get you in, but then you're battling to be 6-4. Whereas in Division 2 in the old system, 6-4 didn't get you close to the playoffs. No. In fact, if you had 3 losses, you were probably out. So it is exciting. You and I have been supporters of this, and again, we want to say it again. Hats off to the DIAA. The football committee, Jim Comegys, those folks in particular, they put a ton of work into this.
They did that.
John Wilson was in on the forefront of this. And, remember back in the spring, people, if you were listening to our podcast, a lot of our conversations centered around the football and what they were going to do. And it was not a quick process. It was a lot of meetings, a lot of time outside of meetings that these guys spent. It wasn't just jumping on a Zoom for 3 hours. It was the work that went in for hours.
No, they were deliberate. They were deliberate about this.
It was incredible. And so they've done a nice job. Is it going to be perfect? No, but nothing any of us do is perfect. It's a new system. They're going to do it. They're going to evaluate it. They're going to tweak it, and then they're going to do it again, and they're going to go forward. So I'm looking forward to it. Marty, I know you're looking forward to it. We will be back on Sunday. We'll drop our podcast by noon. is the plan, where we will talk about all the games that we just talked about, see how we did predicting, see whether some of them were closer than we thought we'd be. We hope so. We hope there's a lot to talk about. So we hope you'll tune in again. Until then, he's Marty Sheehan. I'm John Buzby. As always, share the podcast, like it, tell your friends about it. It's an exciting time of year. We appreciate you being with us.